Hello, everyone. My name is SY, and I'm the director at 062 Gallery. Thank you all for joining tonight's panel discussion. Some of you may not know about 062, so I'll start off with introducing 062 to you all. Named after local zip code in Gwangju, South Korea, 062 is a nonprofit art gallery housed within the Zovi Art Center in Bridgeport, Chicago, and is committed to the promotion of global art discourse. 062 is an open platform for artists and cultural organizations. 062 supports the work of emerging and established artists through the disseminations of ideas, actions, and conversations in experimental exhibition format. This group exhibition presents works of 18 CPS Lives artists. Due to COVID-19, 062 and CPS Lives had to make a last-minute decision to switch everything online. I hope you all had a chance to look at our website, and if you haven't, we'll put it in the chat. Thank you to all the artists for allowing us to present their works in experimental format. Thank you, Tim062. Thank you, Suzette, Kendall, and Sophia at CPS Lives, and our web developer, Andrew. Thank you, John and Edra, for your amazing work. Thank you, Stephanie, for moderating this conversation. And lastly, thank you all CPS teachers and staff members. I hope you guys enjoy this panel discussion, and I'm gonna pass it on to Suzette.
Thank you. Thank you, SY, for all your work you did to create an amazing virtual home for all of our artists. Kendall, Sophia, and I have really enjoyed working with you and your team to create a fantastic new virtual space with our unbelievably talented Andrew, our web designer, that is accessible to everyone on their phones and desktop computers. My name is Suzette Bross, and I'm the founder and executive director of CPS Lives. CPS Lives is a nonprofit that creates artist residencies in the Chicago Public Schools that are free to the Chicago Public Schools. Artists become mentors to students and make work and share stories about public education. This evening, you will hear from two of our wonderful artists, John Preus and Edra Soto. Both John and Edra will be showing in our EXPO Chicago booth next spring. We are so lucky to have these awesome artists in conversation with the amazing Stephanie Cristello, who is the artistic director of EXPO Chicago. John developed his multidisciplinary practice from roots in both painting and furniture making, which became entwined in his collaborative work with material exchange in graduate school at the University of Chicago. He grew up in Tanzania to Lutheran missionaries, which influenced how he thinks about materials, appropriation, the possibility of shared ethical norms, the clash of cultures. Preus is also a fabricator for other artists and designers, which has influenced his thoughts on authorship and collaboration. Preus was a 2019-2020 interpreter in residence at the Smart Museum. He was recently a Kaplan resident at Northwestern University, a 2016 nominee for the U.S. Artist Fellowship, and was included in New City's Chicago Art 50 in 2016. He was the 2013-2014 Jackman-Goldwasser resident at the Hyde Park Art Center, a 2015 Propeller Fund recipient, a 2014 Efroymson Fellow in Sculpture and Installation, 2014's first place winner of the Maker Grant. Selected solo exhibitions include The Bride Stripped Bare, Even, Agenda to the Historical Record at Pentimenti Gallery in 2018, The Beast, Herd Mentality at the Montserrat College of Art. John Preus, new work at the Rena Bransten Gallery in San Francisco, The Relative Appetite of Hungry Ghosts at the Rhona Hoffman Gallery in Chicago, John Preus on Drawing at the Heilbronn Kunstverein in Germany, The Beast at the Hyde Park Art Center in 2013, Slow Sound Experimental Sound Studio in 2013. Puerto Rican-born Edra Soto is an interdisciplinary and co-director of the outdoor project space, the Franklin. Her recent projects, which are motivated by civic and social actions, prompt viewers to reconsider cross-cultural dynamics, the legacy of colonialism, and personal responsibility. Recent exhibitions include Albright Knox Northern, New York, the Momentary in Arkansas. She attended residencies at Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture in Maine, Beta Local, the Robert Rauschenberg Foundation, Headland Center for the Arts, Project Row Houses, and Art Omni. Recent awards include the inaugural Found Work Artist Prize and commission from the Millennium Park Foundation. She recently contributed 3 MacArthur Foundation's International Connections Fund exchanges and exhibitions in Puerto Rico, Cuba, and Brazil. She is a lecturer at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. And Stephanie is Cristello is a curator, writer, and the contemporary art critic, and a contemporary art critic living in Chicago, Illinois. She is the founding editor-in-chief of The Scene, Chicago's International Journal of Contemporary and Modern Art. She currently serves as the artistic director of EXPO Chicago and is the director and curator at Chicago Manual Style. She is currently the guest curator at Kunstverein and the curator advisor in Busan at the Busan Biennale. Welcome, John, Edra, and Stephanie. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Suzette and SY, for pulling this all together, and a really amazing platform for work, and just a really incredible way to show it. I know that Sophia and Kendall and everyone at the CPS Lives team and all of the artists worked incredibly hard in order to launch this, and I haven't really seen anything like this, so it's really an honor and a privilege to be moderating today's discussion with Edra and John. And I know that you gave really thorough introductions, and we're going to basically structure this conversation as a bit of an open forum that will explore the digital platform that's developed on Gallery 062, as well as delve into Edra and John's individual practices and how that relates to their specific piece for CPS Lives in this context. So I just wanted to say thank you, Suzette and SY. We're gonna get just Edra, John, and I on the screen now, but we'll bring everybody back for a question and answer closer to the end of the discussion. Just give me one moment. I don't know, SY, how I do it. Well, you might just be here for a second. Okay, here we go. So, I guess I wanted to start with saying that, Edra and John, both of you are very familiar with one another's work. And I think the reason why I was asked to moderate this discussion is because of our ongoing collaboration and what we were preparing for when EXPO Chicago was going to take place this September at Navy Pier, before being rescheduled to our April dates in 2021, which will now be April 8 to 11, which is when this project will eventually be revealed. But it really started with a collaborative process between the two of you that relates to both of your individual projects within CPS Lives elementary schools. And really what the project was building upon each of your abilities to sort of create stages and opportunities to show and collaborate with other artists in the program. And I think that sort of approach was very interesting and engaging to everybody at the fair, and certainly all of us at EXPO, because it is so indicative of your collaborative practices and how you approach your work. So I wanted to just sort of start there and give a little bit of context to all of our attendees here on what motivates you in your practice. And then I wanted to go through the online exhibition and talk about each of your works individually, but just to start on how you two are familiar with one another's work and how you've collaborated before and what led you to this process of wanting to develop a platform for collaboration in the context of a major international art fair. And Adra, maybe we can start with you.
Hi. Hi, everybody. And thank you, everybody, for the amazing work that you have done in putting this beautiful exhibition online. Thank you, Stephanie, for being with us. And great to see you, John.
You too, Edra.
Yeah. So I think if I don't know if I'm right about this, but I think John and I collaborated through a project that John organized for the Chicago Public Schools. I think that was the first time that we, you know, that we did some type of overlap on collaboration. But I can relate to his practice and his form, his way of thinking, of connecting with others, and how to include others in his work. So maybe you can talk a little more about your project, the project that you did for CPS.
When was that? How many years ago?
The Infinite Games show at Open House Contemporary. That was in 2018, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a exhibition that I put together with 50 Chicago artists and designers, and invited them to work with the materials that I'd collected from the school closings. A lot of the work that I've been doing for the past maybe 6-7 years has been based on this material that was collected from the massive school closing that happened in 2013. And so having had this warehouse full of material to work with, I've been thinking about what to do with it, and using it in my own work as an artist and contractor for a long time. And but there's still a lot of it there, and I wanted to have other artists and designers respond to it. And Edra was Ed and Dan, her partner and collaborator, both made a piece for that exhibition, which was at Open House Contemporary. But we also collaborated or crossed over on a number of exhibitions, including, I think Edra had some work in shop. Isn't that right, Edra? The Hyde Park. Yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah.
But I think we've been in some shows together also. But
yeah. For a while. Yeah.
It's interesting, with Open House Contemporary, for those who aren't familiar with the model, it's basically a series of Airbnb units that function as livable exhibition spaces. And what I think is so interesting is that the few times that I've encountered your work together, Edra and John, it's been in not conventional circumstances, right? Like having an exhibition within an Airbnb unit as well as this online digital platform are two very different spaces. And John, it's interesting because you've been working with CPS material for a long time. And so I'm curious how your practice changed or how you approached a collaboration with CPS Lives, considering that you have essentially not been an artist in residence, but used CPS material very much for your work. And it's very much a driving conceptual factor in your work. And then Edra, I know that you've taught in these schools as well. So I want to just hear what your historical relation is to CPS schools and how that's different from the specific projects that we're going to look at in a moment for this digital exhibition for CPS Lives.
Yeah, so while my relationship with the CPS was as a teacher, as an employee, and working with students, teaching art, just regular art courses for 10 years. That was my first official job here in Chicago, and it really maintained me connected to working with basic materials, which is something that I think I continue to do. My appreciation for conventional materials. And I did integrated a lot of those materials, including this work that I'm presenting for this exhibition, which is more about archiving, which is why I think it makes sense that I bring it back after 15 years. This is a project, this work that I'm presenting for 062 and CPS Lives exhibition that is titled Present. Is documenting the students that I met at Westinghouse College Prep that is here in East Garfield Park, my neighbor's school. And yeah, it shows to document the portraits in this format because it allowed me to archive this this connection. I didn't want to use photography because I just started working with the CPS school recently in January, so I wasn't too familiar with the students, and I also wanted to create a project that it can also be integrated in their curriculum and have the students participate of this project. So it was sort of like an excuse for me to have conversations with them. And also it was part of my proposal for CPS Lives to create a project that it could be built and become larger as time goes by, that I could endure for a couple of years as I keep working with them if they have me. And I think the main purpose for me to join CPS Lives was to get to know the community of Westinghouse that is my neighbor school that live this 2 blocks away from where we live. And I thought that was it was very important to me. So when this happens, I felt just very lucky because other parts of my practice consist on offering workshops that sort of that also kind of create an extension of my practice. And I was seeking to meet students and introduce them to my work and have them work with me in the future.
Yeah.
So
and we'll definitely get more to the exact styles of photography that you were tapping into and this language of visual culture, but it's really fascinating that you used as your choice a school that is very much a part of your domestic identity too. It sort of instead of experiencing something very far away and distant, you chose to go somewhere close and delve deeper. And John, I'm curious if you can speak a bit about your choice in what CPS school you chose for the CPS Lives residency and how that's different from this massive materials that you were working with since 2013.
I ended up at Sullivan High School in part because I lived across the street from it and in Rogers Park, and in part because Suzette knew the principal there, and she knew he was open and interested and knew about CPS Lives. So he connected me with the art teacher there, and I tried to work my project into her existing curriculum and just introduce materials from my trove. And I would work with the students. Each project was a group of students working together, and they would so I'd bring in small material scraps from my shop. They would draw onto the scraps the shapes that they wanted to make the pieces that they were working on, which were masks and garments, and pillars or totems. They ended up with a few different forms that were based in part on projects that the teacher there was already committed to. So I really just introduced material and some processes that they could use to work with that body of materials.
I remember you saying it was also, you know, involving masks and columns and these sort of
Yeah.
museum style objects that were being taught by the curriculum anyway, but
Yeah.
sort of looking at two different ways of treating these assignments. One as a very historical, straightforward document, and the other as more of a creative practice and lending your process for the students to look through those lenses. And I remember you saying that, you know, you're quite surprised by some of the forms that came out of this. And Edra, I know for you as well, and that was largely cut short due to the pandemic and the crisis here. So, you know, I think that there's also germs of ideas for both of you in these projects that started that seem to have carried over to the online exhibition as well.
Yeah.
And so I did want to share my screen and give everyone a tour. It's quite interactive, the exhibition site. So I'll do my best from my computer to lead everybody around. It works really great on your iPhone because it's essentially adopting a 3D model and an entire architecture and world of how people can interact with these works. So it's very spacious in some ways. I'm just going to give my computer a second because it's making a, you know, it's very spacious in some ways. You can basically navigate with just the move of your mouse and see, you know, the artist, the title, the works in that way. Which I think, you know, the design of this platform is something that immediately impressed me just because it really takes the idea of a digital and didn't make a viewing room or something that looks like an online auction house out of this project, but makes it into something interactive. So just to follow our sort of order, I'm going to go with you, Edra, first and enter into your space and give everybody a little bit of a tour here. But I'm wondering if you can speak about the process first, just to orient everyone and allow them to enter the work, and then sort of what you discovered throughout it. And you're muted.
Thank you. So as a form of memorializing my experience in the school and my meetings with the different students of Westinghouse College Prep, I decided to do this project using this particular format, which it sort of looked like a type of contemporary milagro, which is a votiva type of a Mexica motif. And I was really taken by the profound meaning and sincerity that this type of craft sort of is have embedded. So I was really excited to kind of explore this once again, which I like I said, I have explored in the past. I use this format for a project that I did in 2004, which was the documentation of the year.
And that was called A Year in Review at Gallery 400, right?
Exactly, it was called A Year in Review. And for that project, I used the soft metal and I used 3 colors to color code the experience of the viewer that sort of moved through the printed newspaper. And in this case, I used the Chicago Sun-Times to document world news and entertainment news and local news. And for each news, I use a color. And the end was over 500 pieces that I installed. And I also did a summary of each month with line drawings that I also use color. So yeah, it was a great experience. But I think the main reason that I think I continue to gravitate to things that help me document and archive my experiences. And this is very important because it just helped me remember people that I meet occasionally. And this was the situation with the Chicago public schools, and my experience with Westinghouse was visiting once or twice in a week, and there's different classes. So for me to keep track with the students that I met, there's a lot of students, so I decided to keep a track by doing this project.
Yeah. And the format is just so fascinating too. You know, I know that when we spoke earlier, we were talking through what brought you to this highly cut out, very graphic representation of portraiture. And it was really about the newspaper, which was a much more popular form in 2004 with the Year in Review exhibition. But it's quite different now in terms of how we experience our news. It's mostly digital, mostly online. So in some ways, it's taking this analog form, translating it to an analog process, which is also, you know, making these portraits through metal, and then having it be hosted online, which is returning the sort of source of the news and the authorship back to a digital space.
Yeah, another detail that I think is worth mentioning is that I documented my meetings with the students by taking a portrait of them as they gave me permission, and they didn't, because of the pandemic, they didn't end up seeing the project. So it was in the beginning stages. So
they can see it now, right? Like
they can see it right now. Yeah, actually Lisa Pinnell, my liaison at Westinghouse, she sent me a note saying, "Oh, I hope that we can continue working," which I really hope so.
Yeah,
Continue working in the future.
Yeah.
Who knows? But it will be lovely.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great experience. I didn't feel comfortable using a direct picture of them, or even sharing those, because they were too new to me as people that I recently met. I felt they were very generous by letting me take their picture, but I felt that I needed time to get to know them better, to share them, to share their picture.
Yeah.
So that's just the way that I felt about this. So I thought this was my best option, and I actually saw it from the beginning. I knew. I proposed this project thinking that it was going to take me time to get to know them. So and my goal was not only documenting the students, but also the faculty and the people that work at the school. So I had the ambition to kind of document everybody that I could, so that
well, there
maybe.
will still be the opportunity in April.
I hope in the future that will be nice.
That's great. And one of the questions I'm going to ask you both after you give this tour around is how this relates to your larger practice. So we'll definitely be coming back to this. But John, I wanted to give you a moment to sort of, you can see everything that I'm doing here, right? So if there's a specific project you want me to click on first, let me know. Maybe we'll start with this GIF. Oh, that's the still. That's also a still, but this rotates through, right? Oh, John, you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. can you get the chair to rotate?
I don't think can I? I hope so. Is it here in this matrix?
Could be.
Okay, wait, I have to go to the about queue. And then, here we go. An error occurred, okay.
Oh dear.
It's okay. Bear with us 1 second, everybody.
Good.
These are the joys of digital exhibitions.
Yeah.
And not having well, now you've all seen what I listened to on YouTube in the past week.
Behind the curtain.
Yeah. Well, John, maybe we'll start on another work while I figure this out.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the individual pieces are really just the students' initiative. Part of my interest is I'm always trying to find ways to introduce or bring in some more manual elements into the education system when asked to do so. I've done some other youth projects too, and I think the apprenticeship model is something that I've always been interested in trying to figure out how to reformulate. I think we've sort of tragically given up on education in the trades, and sort of focused on let's get everybody into college for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody wants to or should go to college, and there are a lot of others. The trades are a honorable life, and and I had the experience of when I've occasionally teach sculpture or something at the Art Institute or Northwestern, and often I've seen that the students have a lot of capability with the digital stuff, like making these really beautiful models digitally, but then when they get into the shop, how do you use a drill, like these really basic hand tool kind of things that a lot of people don't have access to. So I was trying to, in that context of public school, like introduce some of the kids to drills, and it was a struggle. There's just not a lot of tools there. The time frame was not so conducive, because once you pull everything out, the shop time is only, you really only get about 20-25 minutes of work until the next, have to go into the next class. So
anything substantial.
Yeah. So a lot of it was just really, really basic introduction to things and hand saws, and I brought a little jigsaw into the class. And when I was a kid, I learned how to use a bandsaw in 3rd grade, and they just don't have that anymore. And it's sort of I think it's something we're going to pay for a long time, that we don't introduce, like we're trying to nerf the whole world for our kids, and I think it's damaging them. Yeah. So, but it was nice to see what they came up with, given, I'd come in every maybe week or two and check on how they were doing, and cut some more materials for them. Things that were too complicated to cut in the classroom, I'd take back to the shop and cut out and bring back. And a lot of them seemed really interested in like what I did, how I did it when I was gone. And it's really sad that I didn't have the opportunity for them all to come to the shop and see the machines. And but yeah, and they came up with some really beautiful forms.
Yeah, like we're looking at this column by Alondra Cruz, Lucera Maya, and Florine Perelius, and Anisha Ramal. So they were all very collaborative, I assume,
Yeah.
because of the nature of the class. And some of these masks are just great.
Yeah, I love that one.
Yeah, this one's just wonderful. Yeah, I mean, I wonder if you can speak a bit about, you know, when we were talking earlier, it was this idea of what came out, and I think this really applies to both of you, was sort of how you were and how the students are dealing with identity in some way, whether it's masks or portraiture, or students sort of becoming the source to cover and uncover these relationships that they have with the material world. John, you said something really amazing about, you know, the first thing that children learn to build are forts, because it's interior space. And what you noticed the most was these masks, which is about projecting an exterior space. So I wonder if you could talk a bit about your relationship to the material, but also to the sort of shared identity that's within both of your works.
Yeah. So should I respond, or Edra, you want?
If you could go, because I loved that fort metaphor.
Yeah. Well, I think part of what I'm always interested in, and the rotating chair sort of talks about this, is that ideas evolve, people evolve, forms evolve, and there's this. I think the way that identity forms when you're young, in part, like, you know, some kids build forts, some kids are, you know, impersonating things that grown-ups do, having tea parties and dressing up, and, you know, like, kids are constantly trying on identities. That's just part of what they do, and they imitate us, they imitate everything, they just soak everything up like sponges. And in a way, part of what I think makes identity feel healthy is the sense of it being malleable, that, you know, I have some control over this situation. I can, and I think for a child, that's a very tactile experience. I can change my clothes, I can change the environment, I can turn this couch into a fort, I can pile a bunch of pillows up and crawl inside of the opening. So like, when I talk to the students about sculpture and architecture and design, it's, you know, you're using the world around you to sort of reform the world into maybe one you would like to be in a little bit better. And I think now, when kids are dealing with identity at such a virtual level, you know, it's almost like identity has become this sort of constantly curated experience, in a way that, you know, people of my generation would have been very different. You know, you're constantly showing some portrait of yourself, through, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or social media of whatever form. You have these sort of disembodied identities. And I think there's a way in which, and I have kids myself, so I'm watching this happen as they get older, and, you know, it's like everybody has these multiple avatars of themselves in a much more deliberate and direct way than we would have had as kids. And I think there's something about being able to actually take physical material from around you, transform it into something else, in that is sort of a embodying experience, we could say.
Yeah. And, you know, it's funny that you just said that. We just had a question from one of the audience members asking what makes you so drawn to working with students and youth. And, you know, John, I think that articulates it perfectly. Edra, I'm curious about what your thoughts are.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I actually started working, teaching high school, um, after working with uh, After School Matters, which is a mentorship program that allow artists to work at schools from the Chicago public school system. And that was the first time that I experienced being inside a Chicago public school and learning about the community. So it materialized, what that really looks like and what it feels like. And incredibly enough, there was a great Mexican population and Latino population in the schools that I worked, and that was fascinating to me. It was really comforting. I could relate to them. I admire them as, young, disciplined uh, students. I working at Kelvin Park High School. The majority of my students were Mexican. I was fascinated by their um, sense of discipline and their craftsmanship. It was a delight. And I think, I think I've always been an introvert that seemed like an extrovert, but there's a part of me that never grew up of being so shy, and I never felt fully confident of working with adults, but I felt really comfortable working with youth, and it made me very happy. Also, the fact that I don't have children, I just felt like it kind of fulfilled a part of my life as well, just kind of having this motherly role, and just like my enthusiasm for the arts and for sharing my experience as an artist. And it just, everything sort of became like a really fruitful and positive experience. So to the to the point of being 10 years just working with the public schools and then with the charter schools.
That's great. Yeah, I know it really fulfills a different need for both of you in each of your practices, and I think that's sort of the most interesting part for me, as someone that doesn't work in those spaces very often, but just seeing how this platform for CPS Lives has taken a huge amount of Chicago artists and place them within these scenarios within the schools that lead to projects that no one could have ever anticipated. And I think that those parameters, it's a very conceptual practice in the limitation of the parameters, defining how you can grow and do something.
Mm-hmm.
In
And as a high school teacher, I know the limited amount of access that anybody can have to the schools if you don't work there, or if you don't work there. So this is a very wonderful, amazing program, and I feel very grateful that I got invited to participate, because it really, just having the opportunity to visit and this become a potential source and connection to this community. I think it's the right thing. and giving the right kind of visibility to what Chicago public schools look like and what is the life inside that school.
Yeah, and we have one more question from the audience, which is, how do you tie your art to everyday activism from big or small steps?
How do you tie
your art to everyday activism?
Yeah. Well, in my case, I think about what the one person can do. What, you know, you decide what you want to do in your life. In my case, I decided that I wanted to be an artist, and I invested a lot of time studying, going to, you know, college, doing a master's, teaching, working to make money to fund my projects, and then working, writing grants to fund my projects. It's just a lot of work. So I have invested a lot of time in becoming who I am today. And but that is definitely very tied with that, with who you are as a person. Like to me, there's not a great divide in between, you know, your values, who you are, how you carry, um, how you run your life, with how you run your career. And I think in my case, the projects that I've been working on for the past 3-5 years speak to my sense of civility, how I see just through the projects like Open 24 Hours, where I um, pick up bottles from the garbage that I see in my community. I actually learned this in high school. When I was in high school, I had a teacher that will take us to the hallway, as I told you guys this story, take us to the hallway and tell us, well, even if it's not your garbage, you are going to pick it up. And to me, at that moment where my high school teacher direct us to a hallway and tell us to clean the hallway, to me that was, I mean, I still remember, it was such a crucial moment of teaching us how to be educated, take care of your environment. And it extended to what it is today. I didn't do it on purpose because the project is a little manic, you know, like it's really over the top, like how, you know, I carry on, because mainly because of my belief that this is the right thing for me to do. It also, there's some excitement in the discovery and the understanding of what it means that keep me connected to it. But yeah, I think perhaps there's an activist or
It's really
artist.
it's really interesting how you speak about the sort of individuality of activism as well. You know, I think so often we think of it as a public display, which it absolutely has to be for a lot of different causes and a lot of different reasons. But there's also the butterfly effect of just being a good person who inspires other people to be good people, or create, you know, to think about something differently. And I think, you know, what really attracts me to the CPS Lives mission is this idea that before these youth have too much concrete blocks set into place, I think everybody sort of starts in this very creative, very fluid mode, and then slowly that gets blocked and slowly gets concretized until, you know, the ability to empathize or to see things from other perspectives is no longer a comfortable opportunity. So I wonder, John, if you think about that at all in your work.
The activism question.
Yeah.
I guess I think of, I've never called myself an activist. And I guess I think of it as like, it seems to me that most people are trying to make the world more the way they like it. And activism is sort of a version of that. It's like you frame a problem and you know, try to make some headway on changing something on a broader level than your own individual. But I think I think I'm inclined to think of it along the lines of how Edra talks about it as something. I remember reading somewhere that philosophy begins with disappointment, and I think there's a way in which art is similar. Like, I feel like there's the projects that are interesting to me are ones where I feel like I've run up against some blockage, something that feels like I'm being cramped or enclosed in some way, or not allowed to do what feels like something I want to do. And when I see that happening around me in other ways, and other people suffering from some similar sense of crampedness, you know, to more or less extreme degrees, you know, what is it that I can do with my particular bag of tricks to make the world a little bit more interesting to me? And, you know, I can only hope that it also is interesting to somebody else, but.
Yeah, that's great. And so I wanted to open it up to question and answer. We have quite a long one here from Malvika Jolly, and I wanted to, Malvika, allow you to ask the question. So I'm going to unmute your microphone. Just give me 1 second. Can I figure it out?
I met Malvika in the Beast.
Yes. All right. Talking is permitted. So Malvika, you'll just have to.
Hi. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, great. Yeah, hi to both of you. Thank you so much for doing this. I had a question for John about the Beast, but also more broadly about kind of alternative pedagogies. So I'm sort of wondering about kind of alternative schooling or unschooling, and I kind of associate you with Laura Schaefer, who I know does a lot of free schooling. But one of the things I remember most about the Beast at the Hyde Park Art Center was not only the kind of amazing, massive built environment, which also came to mind when you said the thing about forts as the first space that children build, but also there was like a full roster of community programming and youth events designed for the space, and that beyond that, how much the interior, like the belly of the Beast being open and available without supervision and having all these interesting, like the upstairs, the nooks and the crannies.
Yeah.
Invited its own kind of reality at that time. So, you know, I was a teenager when the Beast was up, and I felt that like I was really into it, and that it specifically invited a kind of community and like youth usage of the space that now to me is like deeply intentional and fits in with like a philosophy of kind of free schooling or education. And I was wondering if you could speak about what you were thinking and how you think through designing such a space, like how the idea for like the Beast's application came about, and also like what you see as a kind of ideal education for, like the ideal humanist education for a child. That's quite a bit, but you can
Yeah.
what you'd like.
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack, but I really appreciate the question, and it's nice to hear from you again. And I'm very touched that you remember the Beast as well as you do. Yeah, I guess there are ways in which that whole project was a like there's definitely an aspect of how I think education works that has to do with just leaving kids alone to make their mistakes and try things and hurt themselves and correct their errors, and I think there's a way in which we're making fragile humans, and I think part of why that space was interesting for a lot of the youth that used it was because there's nothing else like it. Like, how many places can you just go into a room and you don't have to sign up, you don't have to, you know, become a member, you don't have to, you know, there are very few spaces like that. And I moved to Chicago with young kids in 2002, and I was immediately struck by that because I moved here from Minneapolis, and I grew up in, I was a little kid in Tanzania where nobody was watching me at all a lot of the time. And so much of my youth was just being out in the world, outside doing things. And I feel like there's a definite lack of that potential at the moment. There's no place to do it. Everybody's afraid their kids are going to be kidnapped or injured, or our institutions are all terrified they're going to get sued if a kid falls on the playground. And I really think it's a really tragic and awful situation for kids in a way at the moment. And so ideally, you know, I feel like I'm also conservative in the sense that I'm an incrementalist. I think things that change too rapidly usually end up badly. Like, I'm not a revolutionary thinker, I don't think. I think better changes happen a little bit at a time, because then they get sort of inculcated in the existing culture. They don't like reverse everything, or, you know, change the power dynamic dramatically, and then somebody else is on top and somebody else is on the bottom, right? So so how do you incorporate these much more experimental pedagogical models into an existing structure? It's frustrating in a certain way, because it's so difficult to even, you know, even to show up at a public school with a power tool is a sort of an act of rebellion in a way, or it makes everybody nervous. But so how, you know, I'm always trying to imagine these little pockets that could exist within a given framework that might have some openness to another set of possibilities. And I guess I imagine the beast is like one of the aspects of it that was important to me. Is at the Hyde Park Center, the art center, the garage doors just open right into the belly of it, which completely changes the dynamic. You don't have to go through the front desk anymore. And that's a significant psychological moment, to introduce yourself, walk into a space, and say, I'm here. You know, with the way that was orchestrated was like you could just drift in from the sidewalk without having to, you know, make an effort to enter an art space, right? You just got kind of sucked into it. So, and creating these sort of accidental encounters, I guess, was another aspect of it. Anyway, I could go on, and I don't want to take up too much time. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, thank you, Malvika. We have another question from Serena Johnson-Roulier, so I'm just going to allow the talk here. All right, you just have to unmute your microphone. Perfect.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi. Thank you very much, all of you. This is really amazing. It's so much fun to listen to the thought process behind the art. And as I listen, I'm just wondering, I have kind of a two-sided question. I'm wondering if, as you continue to work with the students, if you noticed any kind of change in the students from the access to not just art, but also to your particular practice. And if so, if you could describe that, like, was there a different kind of community that, you know, sort of began to form around it? Or if, you know, maybe there were individual voices that seemed to be really stimulated by it. And on the flip side, I'm wondering if by virtue of working with the students, you felt that you grew in some way in your own practice. And if so, if you could describe that.
Edra, maybe you can take this one first.
That was for both of you, actually.
I wasn't very clear about the first part of the question, but the second part, unfortunately, it's too early for me. You know, like I started working with Westinghouse in January, and yeah, I saw the potential of bonding, you know, with this community really well, but it's too early. So maybe, I'm so sorry, but maybe you can explain the first question.
Yes, the first part of it was whether or not in the process of working with the students, you began to see the development of a community amongst the students around the art, or some sort of change in the students because of their contact with your artistic practice and or concept.
Yeah, for me it was too early. I did see they were very intrigued about my presence there, because I'm not a part of the community, and I could engage in conversations with them as I like, which is a privilege, and it's sort of like giving me full access to a community that I'm not a part of. So I'm very respectful to that. So and I'm very grateful as well. So but I treat it as such. It was a slow process for me. And my process was having a conversation with them, asking them if it was okay to take their portrait. But I had all these questions. So my gratitude to Laura, Lisa, the liaison that allowed me to, you know, spend time with her students. And yeah, it's a very unique program. So I'm just hoping that in the future I can continue to engage.
John, we'll end on you, and then I think we're about at time.
I guess it's always hard to tell what the students are taking or getting from the experience. I don't know that I could say something very specific that I saw change, other than as an art teacher, just watching an idea develop and how the students end up working with the material, watching all the different things they try, and like that's always a super interesting process. And you know, so it's very obvious that they're learning something. They're trying new things. They're challenged by some material they're not familiar with, so I think that aspect of it is endlessly interesting. But I'm not sure how you know, specifically, if I could say anything about that project and how it affected them.
We just had one more question in the Q&A, and I wanted to end on this one, which I think you'll both be able to, you know, answer as the inverse. Is what did you feel that you learned from the schools that you worked in? You know, how did the dialogue that you had with fellow artists that are working across the CTS Lives program, or the personality of the buildings, the students, the community around those schools, what did they teach you?
Well, in my experience, as I imagine it to how it really played, the times that I got to engage and meet with the community, I felt that there was so much more that to look up to look forward to, and I'm just amazed that that this is something that I can do as an artist. It's like the role of a private investigator or a researcher, you know, and so it's full, you have full access. So I'm like I said, I'm very grateful for allowing me to be a part of this process, because it's I think is what I was hoping for, and it even better, because it's when it actually meet with what you are imagining. it's really great. It's a great program what it provides, which is just access, but it's a big deal in this scenario, because it's sort of entering to a community that, like I said, that you're not a part of. So yeah, I'm grateful that they also understand, you know, what are our intentions as artists.
Mm-hmm.
It's really amazing to hear. So this is the second panel that I moderated for CPS Lives, or partnered on through EXPO, and just hearing the difference in that question seems to always come up, and hearing the difference in the artists' responses is really heartening. You know, I remember, who was it Cecil on the last panel that said, I don't know, they just think I'm like a weird guy in the hallways. Like they're like an artist, okay, you know, working on things, but it's sort of this alien anthropological position to be in until it clicks. And from what I've heard from every single artist, it always does. Like there's that moment of discomfort and otherness that eventually fades away once the project takes off. I don't know, John, if you have any closing comments. Otherwise, I wanted to thank Serena and Malvika for their wonderful questions. And anything from you?
Yeah, thank you for the question, and thank you to Suzette and Kendall and Sophia and the CPS Lives folks. It's really been enjoyable, the experience of working in the school. I didn't get nearly as much time in class with the students as I would have liked, and you know, there were a lot of schedule conflicts, and I had to work within a given you know, the quarters system and how they had the class broken up, and yeah, the gave me a deep respect for Nia, the teacher there, who's juggling I don't know, hundreds of students, I think, in a school year. Knows them by name, knows them, what they're working on, and has all of their projects in her head, and obvious deep respect and affection for so many of the kids. And also just the chance to meet a lot of the, you know, kids from all over the place that were, you know, figuring things out. It's just interesting to work with kids and see what they're up against these days. And yeah, feels like a window onto a world I don't get to see very often, that I really appreciate it.
Yeah. No, and I think we all get to experience that window mediated through both of your work too. So I wanted to thank you both, you know, for all of the work that you put in already, and we're really looking forward to seeing where it leads in the physical world. But until then, I think SY and the team at 062 Gallery did a really amazing job with Kendall, Sophia, and Suzette to launch this digital exhibition. So I hope that everybody can take the time to view it and really explore. It is very interactive, like I said. You know, I was walking around my house earlier, just like the show through the lens of my phone, and no, it's a real a real pleasure to speak with both of you. So, and thanks for everyone who joined us on a Friday evening.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie and Edra.
Great. We'll make a recording of this available, and the vehicle of that will come in an email, the same way that everyone got invited. So thank you so much to everyone, and have a lovely evening.
You too.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.